So in just a minute or two, I'm going to take you to the table and we're going to go through hooks. And does size really matter? Absolutely, 100%. I'll tell you that it matters when it comes to your crochet hooks. It determines how fast your project will grow. It'll even determine how you hold it. It'll determine how your project looks and how tight it will be. You got to choose, and it's very difficult when you're starting to crochet and you're seeing a whole shelf of crochet hooks, right from the really tiny pin size to really thick to doing plastic bags. So what kind of crochet hook is good to start with? And also, are you going to use plastic, steel, or wood? So let me take you to the table right now, and I'm going to point out some positives and negatives with every one of the hooks. And you know what? I'm not going to give you some kind of line and say, yeah, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Let's get to the honest truth here and determine what crochet hook would be best for you. So here we have two hat sizes, and one's a baby, and I use the size G hook for that. You can see that my stitches are nice and tight, nice and put together. Even when I stretch it, they stay really nice and tight. So in order to do a nice baby's project, you would actually probably want to reduce your hook, and this was the size G. When I go to look at my own hat, this is the Mikey's Male Signature hat, you can tell just by looking at the stitches that the stitches are a lot bigger, and I used a size K hook for that, and the tutorial is available on mikeysmail.com if you're wanting to do something like this. So your hook size actually matters in order for how your project will look. So let's actually examine some of the hook sizes and actually look at some of the differences in the material. I have here an arrangement of different hook sizes and in different materials. And what I would recommend if you're starting out is go grab yourself a size J. And a size J is a 6.0 millimeter. It's perfect for working on yarn that is like Super Saver, Bernat yarn, the Red Heart yarns. You will see that it actually fits within the material just fine. So I would recommend a size J to start, but let's go over the different types of hooks in order to choose if you want to go wood, steel, or plastic. So looking at our hooks here, we're going to look at plastic first. Plastic is pretty inexpensive. It's probably one of the cheapest hooks that you will find on there, and usually the measurements are right on the neck. The disadvantage with plastic I find is that when you start sweating or your hands get a little bit slippery, they don't really track well to the plastic. It actually is very hard to do. So you might find yourself, especially when you're learning how to crochet, is that you get really tense, you get scared that you're being too tense, and then you get nervous and then you sweat, and it becomes virtually impossible to be able to hold on to these hooks. So I don't like plastic too much for that reason, but also there's other disadvantages that I will point out later on down the road. The next type of hook that we're going to look at is actually aluminum. I said it was steel earlier, but it's actually aluminum. Again, inexpensive to make, but also the same conclusions that I have for the plastic. When your hands start to sweat, it's very hard to grab onto the finely polished aluminum that you see. This is a great one here. It's not as polished, so your hands actually will stick to it a lot more easier. There's disadvantages with aluminum versus plastic or even wood is that this stuff usually stays cold. So if your house is cold, you will find that this actually robs the heat from your hand and tries to absorb it into the needle or into the hook, but it's not successful. So it continues to rob your heat from your hand, and it actually can cause a significant cramping within your hand that you won't even really notice until after you decided to put it down and start watching TV without crocheting. So it's great in that way. I also find with myself too is if my hands are too dry, the very finely polished ones, it's very hard to grab onto as well. And these ones also have polymer that's been added to it, which is the kind of new craze in crochet, and we will talk about that in a little bit. So the third type of hook that we have is wood, and usually it's made out of bamboo, extremely light. Of all of the hooks that are available, these are the lightest ones of all. If your hand was out there like this and it was just sitting on top, you would probably not even know it was there. So I give that a 10 for that. There's a light dusting of urethane that has been added to it for shine, and you will find when your hands start to sweat, and they will sweat, especially when you're learning how to crochet, is that your hands will not slide on this. The wood actually provides a nice gripping power for you. Also, what you need to make sure is that some people are manufacturing these on out of their house, and you have to make sure that they're providing you enough hook in the end. There are some manufacturers where they're not providing you enough, and if that hook is not deep enough, you'll find that the material just slips off really easily. So you just have to be careful that when you're going to look for it, that you're actually making sure you get enough hook in order to pull your material through. Also, I guess, you know, wood, you would think that it would be more breakable, and it probably is, but that's not something that I've had an issue with as far as strength, because I've been kind of worried about getting wood and the top of it snapping off. But for what we're doing with the yarn, I've never had a problem with that. So if I were to choose any hook, I would choose the wood over the plastic and the aluminum any day. So spend a little bit of extra money, get your wood hook in a size J, and you'll be laughing to start your tutorials.